why having resources is not enough, and what it takes to turn them into a lasting edge. Two pharmaceutical companies, same industry, same regulatory environment, both listed on major stock exchanges, both with research departments, manufacturing capacity, and global sales forces. One of them has built a drug that earns more than $10 billion a year. The other has not produced a major commercial success in over a decade. Their stock prices reflect the difference. Their talent retention reflects the difference. Their ability to fund the next wave of research reflects the difference. On the surface, the resources look comparable. But somewhere inside each company, the resources themselves are fundamentally different in quality, scarcity, and durability. One company has built something its competitor genuinely cannot replicate. The other has built something that looks impressive on a slide but offers no real protection. This is the central question that strategic management has wrestled with for decades. Why do some companies sustain competitive advantage over long periods of time, while others, even well-resourced, competently managed ones, cannot? The answer is not always found in the market. It is often found inside the organization, in the resources they have built, the capabilities they have developed, and the organizational systems they have built around them. VRIO is the framework that helps you examine exactly that. And it is one of the most useful strategic tools available to any leader, manager, or project professional thinking seriously about where advantage comes from and how to sustain it. Welcome back to The Catalyst. This is episode 12. Today, we cover VRIO, the strategic framework for evaluating resources and capabilities. What it is, where it came from, how to apply it, and why most organizations have resources they vastly underestimate and advantages they are not protecting. VRIO was developed by Barney, a professor of strategic management, first introduced through his landmark 1991 paper, Firm Resources and Sustained Competitive Advantage, published in the Journal of Management. Barney was part of a school of thought called the resource-based view of the firm, the idea that competitive advantage is not primarily determined by where you compete, but by what you bring to the competition. This was a direct challenge to Michael Porter's dominant framework, which focused on industry structure and market positioning as the primary sources of advantage. The resource-based view said, look inward. The most powerful sources of advantage are not in the market. They are inside the organization. In its people, its knowledge, its processes, its culture, its technology, its relationships. Barney's original framework was called VRIN, valuable, rare, inimitable, non-substitutable. In 1995, he refined it to VRIO, replacing non-substitutable with organization, reflecting the important insight that resources only produce advantage when the organization is actually set up to exploit them. That addition changed the framework from a diagnostic into an actionable tool. VRIO stands for valuable, rare, inimitable, and organized. These are the 4 questions you ask about every resource or capability your organization possesses. The first question is it valuable? Does this resource help the organization exploit an opportunity or neutralize a threat? Does it allow the organization to create value that customers are willing to pay for, or that reduces costs in a way competitors cannot match? A resource that does neither of these things is not a source of advantage. It is simply an asset. Many organizations confuse having assets with having advantages. Apple's design capability is genuinely valuable. It produces products that command premium pricing, generate fierce loyalty, and sustain a margin profile that most consumer electronics companies cannot approach. The design function is not just an internal service. It is a direct driver of economic value. The second question is it rare? Even if a resource is valuable, if every competitor has it, it cannot produce competitive advantage, only competitive parity. Rare means that the resource is possessed by few, if any, current competitors. Toyota's production system, the Toyota Production System, or TPS, is valuable. The question is whether it is rare. And the answer is yes. Hundreds of companies have studied TPS. Many have tried to replicate it. Few have succeeded at scale. The system is embedded in decades of institutional knowledge, cultural norms, and supplier relationships that cannot simply be purchased or copied. The third question is it inimitable? Inimitable means costly to imitate, either because it is difficult to copy or because it is difficult to substitute with something equivalent. Barney identifies three sources of inimitability: historical conditions, where the resource was built through a unique sequence of events that cannot be repeated; causal ambiguity, where even the organization itself is not entirely sure why the resource works, making it hard for competitors to identify what to copy; and social complexity, where the resource is embedded in interpersonal relationships, culture, or trust that cannot be engineered from scratch. Google's data assets are inimitable. The quantity and quality of search, behavioral, and intent data that Google has accumulated over 25 years is the product of a specific historical trajectory, being the default search engine on billions of devices, at a time when the internet was growing exponentially, before serious privacy regulation arrived. No competitor can recreate that history, and therefore no competitor can recreate that data position. The fourth question is the organization organized to exploit it? This is the criterion that most frameworks skip, and the one that causes the most avoidable waste. Organizations regularly possess valuable, rare, and inimitable resources and fail to capture the value from them because their structures, systems, incentives, and processes are not aligned to deploy those resources effectively. A consulting firm might have exceptional talent, valuable, rare, arguably inimitable. But if its knowledge management systems are poor, its project allocation processes are dysfunctional, and its incentive structures reward individual billing over collaborative problem solving, the talent will not produce the results it is theoretically capable of producing. The organization criterion is a reminder that resources require infrastructure. When you apply the 4 VRIO questions to a resource or capability, the answers tell you exactly what kind of competitive position that resource creates. A resource that is valuable but not rare creates competitive parity. You are performing at the market standard, but you are not ahead of anyone. This is the minimum entry condition for competing in an industry. Necessary but not sufficient. A resource that is valuable and rare but not inimitable creates a temporary competitive advantage. You are ahead of the market today, but competitors can and will imitate it. Your window is open, and the question is how quickly you can exploit it before it closes. A resource that is valuable, rare, and inimitable, but where the organization is not set up to exploit it, creates unrealized competitive potential. This is perhaps the most painful category. The organization has something genuinely powerful, but internal dysfunction is preventing it from translating that resource into marketplace results. A resource that is valuable, rare, inimitable, and supported by an organization aligned to exploit it creates sustained competitive advantage. This is the gold standard. and it is rarer than most strategy presentations suggest. Infosys, through the 1990s and 2000s, built a sustained competitive advantage in IT services delivery. The combination of talent density, process maturity, offshore delivery infrastructure, and the global delivery model created something that was valuable, rare, difficult to replicate quickly, and supported by an organization designed around it. That combination drove decades of consistent growth. VRIO is most useful not as a retrospective analysis of why a company succeeded, but as a forward-looking diagnostic for leaders and project managers asking, where does our real advantage come from, and are we protecting it? In practice, running a VRIO analysis means listing the key resources and capabilities of your organization or your project, and honestly assessing each one against the 4 criteria. The honest part is critical. Most organizations have a natural tendency to overestimate the rarity and inimitability of their resources. Every company thinks its culture is unique. Many companies assume their processes are harder to copy than they actually are. The most productive VRIO conversations are the uncomfortable ones. The moment a leadership team realizes that what they thought was a core competitive differentiator is actually widely available in the market. That is valuable intelligence. It shifts the conversation from defending what you have to building what you need. For project managers, VRIO thinking applies directly to resource allocation decisions. When a team possesses a genuine capability that is valuable, rare, and inimitable, a subject matter expert, a methodology, a client relationship, VRIO asks, is the project structure organized to deploy that capability where it matters most? Or is it being diluted across work that could be done by anyone? 5 things to carry from this episode. 1. Competitive advantage comes from inside the organization, not just from market positioning. Resources and capabilities are the building blocks of sustainable advantage. Porter tells you where to compete. VRIO tells you whether you can actually win there. 2. The 4 criteria are sequential and cumulative. A resource that fails the first test, valuable, does not need to be evaluated further. A resource that passes the first 3 but fails the 4th, organization, is a warning. You have something special that you are currently wasting. 3. Most advantages are temporary. Valuable and rare, but inimitable, is a description of an opening, not a destination. The window closes. VRIO identifies where to double down before competitors catch up. 4. The organization criterion is the most frequently neglected. Many organizations invest in building great resources and then fail to build the structures and systems that allow those resources to produce results. Infrastructure is not overhead. It is the mechanism through which advantage is delivered. 5. Your action. Identify the one resource or capability in your organization or team that you believe is genuinely rare and hard to imitate. Then ask honestly, is the organization actually set up to exploit it? If the answer is anything less than a clear yes, you have found your most important strategic priority. Coming up on episode 13 of The Catalyst, we move from internal strategy to external relationships. Stakeholder management. Who the real stakeholders in your project are. Why the ones most people overlook often carry the most risk. And how to build a stakeholder engagement approach that prevents the kind of late-stage resistance that kills projects even after the technical work has been done. Stay tuned.